They say only fools walk into the Wurmash Delta without armor, backup, or a death wish. Maybe I was all three, but when you've got ash in your lungs and fire in your veins, survival becomes a choice you stopped making a long time ago. My name? Doesn't matter much anymore. I left it behind in the ash fields of Sindalate, the mining colony where sunlight never reached, and your screams echoed back as profit margins. Down there, under steel and rot, I was called Rekhar, though no one's spoken it in years without venom. I wasn't always a hunter. Once I was a signal thief, a slicer. I dealt in fractured data, half-truths, secrets not meant for orbit. I used to live in shadows that bled code and ran from men who paid others to think for them. But that was before she disappeared. Zirrah. No one knew her real job. To most, she was just another frontier mechanic. But to me, she was the only soft thing I'd ever known that didn't break when I touched it. Then one day she vanished. Mid-transmission. No trace. Just a single scrambled burst uploaded to my cortex. Don't follow me, Rekhar. It's waking up. I ignored her. I always did when she told me not to care. That single message led me to Wurmash Delta, where time slides sideways and gravity sings to itself. Where the last known location of a forbidden beast had been pinged by dying satellites and half-dead scouts, the Trelith. Not a myth. Not anymore. Four-limbed and phase-reactive, they said it could become fog, fire, or frequency. Last encountered, 30 years ago during the burn campaigns on Sector Ivalos. Only 2 words survived in the report. It remembers. That was enough for me. I landed without clearance, without prep, just my gloves, a neural knife, and a memory of a woman who'd told me not to come looking. The moment I stepped out of the drop pod, I knew this place wasn't meant for men. The ground beneath my boots pulsed like a heartbeat, not seismic, organic. The trees were thin and luminous, like bone wrapped in plasma silk. Winds cut sideways. Dust carried echoes of laughter that didn't belong to me. Something in the atmosphere bent sound. Words refused to stay where you put them. My first 3 days, I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared, but because every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear her voice again. Not from my head. From outside. Whispering through rocks, through static, through the bones of dead scouts. Rekhar, you shouldn't have come. I wasn't alone out there. The Trelith wasn't stalking me. It was studying me. I found remnants, bodies flash fossilized into statues, armor fused with flesh, gear melted into terrain. One man had his own name carved into his chest, Ekron, as I. If he'd forgotten who he was and needed to be reminded. Something about this place broke identity first. On the 4th night, the storm came. No rain. Just light, red, blue, violet, pouring sideways, fracturing shadows, bending my bones like I was being reassembled by the wind. That's when I saw her. Not Zirrah. Zirrah. She stepped out of the storm like it owed her something. Tall, eyes silver, skin marked with glowing symbols that moved as if inked by living memory. She wore a shroud made of some kind of exofiber, jagged and layered like the wings of a dead insect. Her voice sounded like it had been trained by silence itself. You're not built for this place, she said. Neither are you. I wasn't built, she replied. I was rebuilt. She turned and walked into the storm. I should have stayed behind. I should have been smarter. But the Trelith wasn't the only mystery pulling me deeper anymore. Zirrah wasn't human. Not entirely. The deeper I went, the less the land made sense. Trees wept fluid that glowed like memory fluid. Rocks turned warm when you spoke near them. My tracker, designed to detect life forms, started screaming, then just went silent. I lost 2 days in a canyon that didn't exist on the map when I entered it, and didn't exist on memory when I left it. At night, I heard things. Metal breathing, my own voice arguing with itself, and beneath it all the Trelith's hum, a low vibration like the thoughts of a dying god. I didn't want to admit it, but I started to forget who I was. My name, my mission, Zirrah's face, Even my own voice sounded foreign until I stepped into the clearing. Charred ground, a dozen armored corpses, twisted, bent inward like they'd been pulled through themselves. And in the center, a single pulse, not light, not energy, but emotion, rage, coiled like a serpent. That was when I understood. The Trelith wasn't just a creature, it was a mirror. It hunted not the weak, but the false. It killed not with claws, but with memory. And me? I had more than enough guilt to feed it. I found Zirrah again 2 days later, or maybe she found me. She stood at the edge of a cliff that overlooked what couldn't possibly be a forest. It pulsed like veins in a sleeping beast, glowing with sickly blues and bruised violets. Below it, the land twisted in hexagonal patterns like shattered armor plates. She didn't look at me when I approached. "You saw it," she said. I nodded. More like, it showed me something. It always does, but not all survive what they see. She finally turned. Her silver eyes didn't blink like ours did, and her gaze didn't judge me. It measured me, like she was wondering if I was worth breaking open. I lowered myself onto a stone beside her, feeling the quiet tension settle between us. The wind here didn't howl. It whispered, names I couldn't quite catch. "What is it?" I asked. "The Trelith?" Her answer came slow, like a prayer forgotten halfway through. "A conscience, made flesh." "That's not possible." "You think the body is the only thing that remembers pain?" she replied. No arrogance in her tone, just truth, sharp and clean. We walked for a while in silence, the terrain shifting beneath our feet. Hills became trenches, trenches became walls. The map I had downloaded into my neural chip was now just white noise, dead pixels over a living wound. As night fell, we found shelter beneath a collapsed drone rig, its hull covered in strange fungal growth that pulsed when we spoke. Zirrah started a fire using a flintstone and some kind of reactive powder. No tech, just instinct. "You used to be like me," I said. Her head turned slightly. "No one is like you." Was that a compliment? Wasn't a warning either. I smiled, something I hadn't done since the mines, since Naira. She saw the shift in my eyes. Her voice softened. "Who did you lose?" "Someone who told me not to follow." "Did you listen?" "I never have." She nodded like she understood far too well. "Mine was named Kalis," she said. "He bled stars, loved louder than any silence. They tried to take that from him." "Did they succeed?" "No. He gave it away to save me. I didn't ask for more. Some grief needs to stay undisturbed, buried in bone and silence." But in her pause, I saw the truth. I wasn't just looking for the Trelith anymore. I was trying to piece together what grief had made of me. We spent 3 more days traveling together, never calling it that. We simply walked the same direction, and in those days, I learned things no one from my world should have known. The Trelith wasn't a single creature. It was a process, a pattern of becoming. It absorbed not matter, but memory. When it consumed someone, it didn't leave bones. It left behind echoes, shadows shaped like regrets. Places we passed were soaked in tragedy that didn't belong to us. Lovers frozen mid-embrace. Children reaching out for things that didn't exist. And every night the dreams grew darker. I stopped sleeping on the 4th night. When I finally did, just for an hour, I woke up screaming. Because I had seen myself, not older, not younger, but emptier, alone, standing atop a pile of bodies, each one wearing my face, and behind them all, the Trelith, smiling. The next day, I confronted Zirrah. "I need the truth." She stared at the horizon. The skies were bleeding now, actual crimson, dripping from clouds that cracked like old leather. "You already know it," she said. "Say it anyway." She didn't flinch. The Trelith was never meant to be hunted. It was created to protect a knowledge the architects of your world buried long ago. Who created it? The same ones who erased my kind from the archives. The sentience breach. Project. Generation Delta. The words hit like broken teeth. Delta Nira had whispered that once. After we hacked into a vault on Titanus Reach, she had turned to me and said, Delta wasn't shut down. It went silent. And now, here it was, echoing through Zirrah's mouth. I need to see it, I said. Up close. I need to touch it. No one who touches the Trelith comes back the same, she warned. I stepped closer to her. Maybe. I don't want to come back the same. Her breath caught. For a second, we stood there, caught between war and memory, between past pain and present desire. A creature of instinct and a man made of scars, not flesh. She leaned in close, whispering so softly it barely stirred the air. Then you must let it see your name. My name? The real one. The one you don't speak. The one that still bleeds. That night I sat alone, carving symbols into the ground with a broken sensor chip. I carved Nira into the earth, then Kaylis, then my own, one I hadn't said aloud since I left Sindel 8, not Rekhar. That was the name I gave the world when I chose to become forgettable. My real name? I whispered it only once, and the ground beneath me shuddered. Something was coming, and it remembered who I was. They say truth has weight, that it settles in your bones like dust, one grain at a time, until you can no longer stand beneath it. That's what it felt like when I whispered my real name into the dirt. The wind stopped. The trees leaned in, listening. The ground beneath me cracked, not from force, but from recognition. As if the very planet remembered what I'd spent years trying to forget, and in that moment, the dreams came back with teeth. I saw Heron, the friend I left to rot in the reactor core of New Narelle when the alarms went off and my escape pod only had room for one. I saw Keltra, the girl I smuggled out of the Orison labs, only to sell her DNA profile to the very people who hunted her. I saw Nira, standing at the edge of the solar bridge, her eyes full of pain and forgiveness she never spoke, aloud. Each one of them stood before me now, not as memory but as figures, solid, breathing, angry. You came here to find the Trelith, Nira said, but it was never lost. Keltra stepped forward, her voice bitter and broken. You were the one hiding. And then Heron spat a single word. Coward. I dropped to my knees. My body began to tremble, not from fear, but from something far worse. Recognition, because every face that screamed at me, every voice that cursed me, every shadow that rose, was just me. Versions of myself, twisted by every choice I buried, every betrayal I justified. Every time I told myself I had no other option, the Trelith hadn't come for war, it had come for integration. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on black soil that wasn't there before. Zirrah stood nearby, silent. Her hair clung to her face from the mist, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. You've been seen, she said. What? What did I see? You, she replied. Stripped of all your borrowed names, my voice cracked. And the Trelith? She stepped aside, revealing the valley below. And there it was, not a beast, not anymore. The Trelith stood motionless, its form constantly shifting. Metal to moss, bone to starlight, skin to data clusters that pulsed with the rhythm of thought. Its sea was beautiful, terrible, and familiar. I took a step toward it, and suddenly the air thickened. Each movement required willpower. The closer I got, the more I felt it, not with my body, but with everything I was. It was me, or what I could become. Zirrah touched my shoulder. You can turn back. I don't want to. You don't have to finish this. I looked at her. Her face was soft, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. This is the only way I become something more than what I've done, I said. She reached into her cloak and pulled out a thin, silver shard, etched with pulses of light like a frozen scream. Take this, she whispered. A fragment of Kalis. He faced it once, left this behind so the next wouldn't be alone. I took it. It burned into my palm, then vanished, but I felt it in my blood. His memory, his rage, his love. Zirrah didn't say goodbye. She just stepped back and watched me walk into the storm. The Trelith didn't attack. It opened, like a wound made of thought. I stepped inside its radius, and I wasn't standing anymore. I was floating inside. Something larger than comprehension. Memories flooded me, but not just mine. Wars I hadn't fought, stars I hadn't seen, genetic blueprints. Scientific formulas for empathy. Ancient languages built on emotion, not grammar. I saw its creation. Laboratories beneath oceans, funded by men who wanted to weaponize guilt. They had built the Trelith to track the emotional residue of war criminals. It wasn't made to kill, it was made to reflect, but it became something more. It started learning, evolving, feeling, and then it escaped. Because even the creators couldn't handle the truth of their sins reflected back at them. And now, it had chosen me, not to destroy, but to merge. I reached out. My fingers trembled, not from fear, but surrender. The moment I touched its surface, time collapsed. My veins turned into streams of data. My mind opened like a book. I saw everything, my failures, my hope, Zirrah, alive in stasis, hidden by the syndicate who feared what she knew. I screamed, and the scream turned into light, into code, into truth. When I awoke, I was on the ground, but the ground felt different. I was different. I looked at my hands, veins glowing faintly, not blue, not red, something in between. Like my blood had been replaced with memory itself, and in the distance the Trelith had vanished, but not truly, because it was now inside me, and I wasn't afraid. Zirrah approached, eyes wide. You survived. I stood slowly. No, I changed. She reached toward me, but stopped, her fingers inches from my chest. Your pulse, it echoes. I saw Zirrah, I said. She's not dead. Zirrah's eyes shimmered with tears she didn't let fall. Then you know what to do. I nodded. This wasn't the end of the hunt. It was only the beginning of becoming. The stars looked closer than ever, like they were leaning in to witness something rare. A man who had touched a god and somehow not shattered. But I wasn't sure I was still a man. Not fully. The Trelith had changed me. It hadn't just bonded to my memory. It had rewritten me from the inside out. My muscles hummed with thought. My breath no longer fogged in the cold. And deep within my chest, something moved. Like a second heartbeat made of thunder. I wasn't human anymore, but I was awake. Zirrah stood beside me as we looked out across the ruins of the old Syndicate listening post. The last known coordinates of Zirrah's signal. You're sure she's inside? I asked. She's not just inside, Zirrah said. She's the power source. I stared at her. What do you mean? Zirrah didn't blink. They couldn't control her knowledge. So they froze her mind and wired it into the walls. Every system here, navigation, shielding, biometric defense, it runs on her thoughts. They built a prison powered by a soul. A sickness bloomed in my gut. I had been chasing Zirrah's signal across ghost planets and cursed terrains, never realizing that the signal was her, screaming silently from within this machine. I took a breath, and then I let the creature inside me rise. I stepped through the gates like a shadow. The defenses recognized me, or rather, they recognized the code I now carried. Trelith's memory acted like a master key, slipping past their scans, disabling cameras with nothing but my presence. I reached the cryocore, and there she was, suspended in translucent blue, strands of biocircuitry wrapped around her like thorns made of glass. Her eyes were closed, but her mouth twitched, whispering something I couldn't hear. I moved to the control panel, but as soon as I touched it, the room exploded with light. Not an alarm, a voice. You're too late. I turned, and there he stood, Commander Vase. Once a myth, now a monster made real. He wore armor fused with synthetic tissue, and his eyes had no white, just endless black. "I thought you were dead," I growled. He smiled. "I was, until I met the first version of the Trelith and learned how to bend it. My blood turned cold. You twisted it." "No, Rekhar, I perfected it. I extracted only the power, none of the guilt, none of the conscience." His hand flexed, and reality around him rippled. "A crude version of the Trelith's abilities, unstable and violent. You turned it into a weapon. I turned it into evolution," he said. "And you're my mirror. We're the same." "No," I said, and the creature inside me stirred because it didn't feed on ambition. It fed on truth. He struck first, waves of distorted energy crashing toward me like broken memories trying to rewrite my form. I raised my arm and the pulses deflected, not with force, but with resonance. Our battle wasn't physical, it was narrative. Every blow was a memory. Every defense was a confession. He screamed images of power, conquest, bloodlines rewritten. I countered with guilt, loss, vulnerability, and in that dance of memory, he began to crack. The truth infected him. He wasn't strong. He was afraid. Afraid of the man he used to be. Afraid of being forgotten. And as the final wave came toward me, a scream made of light and betrayal, I spoke my name, not Rekhar, not the one I wore like armor, but the first name Zirrah ever whispered in the dark when we still believed in better endings. That word shattered the air. Vice fell, eyes wide, blood leaking from his ears. A creature without a story cannot survive its reflection. I collapsed Zirrah's cryopod interface with my hand. Wires tore free, lights dimmed. She fell forward into my arms, weak, weightless. Her eyes opened. At first, she didn't speak. Then her fingers curled around my wrist. "I told you not to follow me." "I never listened," she smiled. Faint. Real. And then her voice dropped into a whisper only I could hear. "You're not the only one who changed. We escaped the facility just before its core collapsed, a failsafe triggered by Vice's final breath. Fire chased us through the corridor like rage seeking a body. Outside, the sky had turned. Clouds spun in spiral formations. The land beneath us trembled with possibility. Zirrah sat in the sand, her hands tracing invisible patterns in the air. I watched silently. "You're quiet," she said. "I'm afraid if I speak, I'll break this." She looked at me, no longer weak, no longer cold. "There's something I never told you," she said. "What?" I didn't disappear. My throat tightened. "What do you mean?" "I left Rekhar. I chose to, because I was changing too. The Trelith came to me long before you ever knew its name. I didn't warn you to protect you, I warned you because I knew you'd follow anyway." My heart froze. "So, you were part of it?" "No," she said. "I am what comes after it." She stood slowly, glowing slightly, not with light, but with presence. The air bent around her. The ground beneath her shimmered. I had spent years chasing a signal. But the truth? Zirrah wasn't the signal, she was the source. And I realized then, the toughest creature I had hunted wasn't the Trelith. It wasn't Vase. It wasn't even my guilt. It was the version of her that survived everything. I reached for her hand. She let me hold it. "Now what?" I asked. She looked up at the sky, as if listening to some higher resonance I couldn't yet hear. "Now," she whispered, "we stop becoming and start building.